And we are back. Yes, it's Tuesday. Did you guys miss me? I know I took a couple of days off last week. I took yesterday off. We've got a lot of stuff going on at the Epiphany Center for the Arts, which I'll tell you all about on Friday. I know I keep saying things, but we are working through our ticketing situation, working through a lot of different things. Lots of good stuff. Of course, welcome to Tuesday, episode 87. Thanks to Craig Pilo in LA for that great intro music. And I am excited today. We're going to have on the two gentlemen from Event Horizon Jazz Quartet, and they are local and they are going to be here. And Tracy Oliver, it's good to see you. He is back. I am back. And thanks for watching all the time. We've got Jim and we have got Scott coming on here shortly. But of course, before I do that, I am Mike Jeffers, Chicago Jazz Magazine, ChicagoJazz.com, and of course you are watching Chicago Music Revealed. I am also the Director of Programming and Entertainment at the soon-to-be opening Epiphany Center for the Arts, 201 South Ashland Avenue, right there in the West Loop. COVID-safe environment, coming up with live music starting September 10th, so stay tuned for all of that, plus a 4-camera live stream platform that hopefully everybody will dig, and we are going to be doing 6 nights a week of live music in a COVID-safe environment to kick it off. Details to come, as I always say, but it is coming on strong here. We are working through some different admin things, and then we're off to the races. So stand by. Announcements coming on Friday during the Blues and Beyond show, which, by the way, Dave Katzman will be back, and we'll be interviewing Nick Moss on Friday's show. So that's all the plugs I have for that. Now, I'd be remiss, and before I bring on Scott and Jim, I'd be remiss, but we lost a legend yesterday, the great Joe Siegel, the founder of the Chicago Jazz Showcase, passed away at 94 yesterday. I had the honor of working with him for 2 full years. Joe and I've known him since 1988 when I first went to the club in high school, but I had the honor of actually doing his autobiography with him for 2 years. He and I worked on this book, and towards the last 6 months, when we were wrapping it up and getting it into the final print version and getting it all edited down, I was with him probably 4 to 5 times a week for 3 to 4 hours a day. And the stories I heard, incredible. And I used to drive around the city with him. I'd pick him up. I'd bring him down to the showcase. We'd work at the showcase. We'd work outside in that little area in Plymouth Court. In the Dearborn Station for hours on end. He had 500, 600, 700 pictures from Charlie Parker back in 1947 performing at Roosevelt University to Dizzy Gillespie hanging out with him at a lounge because he used to bring all these guys in. I mean, Frank Foster, James Moody, the list goes on. And some of the experiences I had, I couldn't even tell you about because you wouldn't believe it. It was incredible. Everybody that came into the showcase, I would end up hanging out with them because they all would hang out and want to see the pictures. And then Joe and I would get in these long conversations. I remember we got in this long conversation with Percy Heath one time. Him and Joe were complaining about somebody from 1958, which was awesome because it was fantastic. And then they started deciding which trumpet players they liked and didn't like, and I'm not going to divulge any of that, but it was very interesting conversation. So anyways, a legend is lost. I had the honor. I'm glad that I was able to put the book together with Joe. We published it a couple of years ago. Wayne at the showcase still has a few copies. He and I texted yesterday after Joe passed, and apparently he passed away listening to Charlie Parker at his home. So Joe, he's in a much better place now. He's able to move around. He's hanging out with Charlie, hanging out with, all of the greats, Dizzy and everybody else, probably listening to the music he loved and chilling out. So there you go. Joe Siegel passed away, a legend. He will be missed. I will miss him. And the jazz community here in Chicago has lost a giant. But Wayne's going to keep the Jazz Showcase cranking along. And, of course, he's open Thursday through Sunday with Isaiah Collier is going to be down there with his group, and then the rest of the week they're celebrating Charlie Parker Month in honor of Joe because that was Charlie Parker Month that Joe Siegel started. So, all right, enough of that. I'm sure everybody will be talking about Joe for many, many years to come, so everybody remember him in your own special way. And, of course, go support Wayne down at the Jazz Showcase. Now, moving on, we have got 2 gentlemen here that I am first meeting right here on Skype, but I got a chance to listen to this recording. And Jim Kaczmarek, I probably said that close to being correctly, and Scott Mertens Welcome to the show, both from the Event Horizon Jazz Quartet. I have seen the name Event Horizon Jazz Quartet over the years with Chicago Jazz Magazine, but I have never gotten to talk to you guys. And to be honest with you, this is my first exploration into the music, and I really dig it, man. Congratulations on the new recording, the new release. It is out. It is available at eventhorizonband.net, and we've got everything linked up down below. So I appreciate you dealing with my Skype situation here leading into the show. That's why I'm late, but that's why the viewers love tuning in, because they want to see the catastrophes that Mike Jeffers can do technology-wise, and I did not disappoint. So, guys, how are you? Glad to be on the show. Thanks so much.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
We're very glad to be here.
So,
doing great.
So let's talk a little bit. First of all, we all know we're in the middle of a pandemic, so nobody's playing too many live shows right now. And you guys put out this brand new release. It's 11 compositions written by both of you in a collaborative effort, I would assume. And so let's talk a little bit about how have you guys been holding up during COVID? I'm assuming you guys probably are teaching online or playing some gigs or practicing. I mean, Jim, why don't you take this one first? What have you been up to keep yourself musically busy during the current situation?
Well, we've been saving our music to release during a pandemic, really, personally, but because we thought that'd be the perfect time to release a CD, because you can't do a CD release party. I've been listening to music, working on new stuff, practicing as much as I can. We've been the band has gotten together about once a week in socially distanced ways so that we can play together, nice. Like out in Scott's front yard, or Rick. There's a warehouse that Rick's got access to, and so we've been having fun that way. But it's a drag not to be able to play in front of people, just because it's just the CD's gotten some wonderful response from people, but really music is about playing with people. The audience is as important as the performer, and so that's been kind of a drag. I haven't been teaching much online. I teach for the Chicago Public Schools, and so that'll be online starting in a few weeks.
Which is probably a good idea, judging by what's going on. I'm glad that the public schools are starting online rather than trying to force everybody to get together and spread the virus.
Amen.
It's been crazy.
Amen.
So let's talk about this brand new release here. And Scott, I was remiss. I should have asked you what you've been up to, but Jim sort of said you guys have been playing together a little bit and doing things. Are you composing on your own and working on some new material, or what have you been up to?
We're working a little bit on that. I've been having some fun with GarageBand and just kind of putting some projects together with backing tracks, just kind of creating that way. Doing a little bit of composition. Like Jim, my full-time gig is I'm also a school teacher, and our district is going back as of Monday. Oh. So that's, and there are what's the nice way of saying it? There are a lot of questions that still need to be answered in our situation. So that's been a really interesting challenge. So that's been where a lot of my focus has been recently.
Yeah, that's by the way, you could be a politician with the way you answered that, because that's a great way to say it. There's a lot of questions that have to be answered. The understatement of the year. But if it's done in a safe manner, I suppose that's the only way to do it. And and to be honest with you, I mean, that's the way the Jazz Showcase is reopening. That's the way Andy's is reopening. I've gotten a lot of intel from people. Even Rose's Lounge reopened, but they're all being very safe, being very socially distanced, and trying to get something happening, because as we all know, this is the worst industry to be in, is the entertainment industry, to play live music in front of people during a pandemic. The two just don't go together, other than, as socially distanced as possible. So at least you guys are able to get together and play a little bit. I love the idea about the outside stuff. And again, if it's in a large enough warehouse, it also works. But I've talked to, and the people that have watched this show will know, I've talked to a lot of musicians that are putting out music these days during COVID. And I think that it's a great opportunity, because you are hitting a captive audience. They're looking for new music, and they're getting hungry. And if they find out about it, more often than that, they're going to check it out. And I'm going to encourage everybody to check this out. So the new release, Event Horizon, by Event Horizon Jazz Quartet. Now, I'm not going to ask the obvious, because I have a feeling we all know why it's named Event Horizon, right? So it's the Event Horizon Quartet. So this is your first release, is what I was reading about. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about the tune selection now, because you guys have been playing as a unit for a little while, and both you, Jim, you and Scott both wrote music and contributed to this. How, Jim, why don't you take this one? How was the process? Did you write a tune? Scott had a tune, and you guys kind of brought it all together and put like maybe 5 of Scott's, 5 of Jim's? I mean, how did the process go to put the repertoire together for this release?
We wrestled it out. Um, uh, uh, we I've been writing for a long, long time. So Scott has a little bit too, but it's been kind of like the band has been kind of my dream. When I first moved to Chicago, I played with like the Buckinghams and some party bands and stuff like that.
Sure.
And I didn't have the time to do this. And so when I was able to put this band together, it was like, okay, we can play my music. And when Scott joined, which he was, him and I have been friends for a long time. We cannot remember when we met, but we've been friends. And I wanted him to be in the band. And I basically I knew that I could tell that he could write. And I basically told him, I said, Scott, you got to write some stuff. I go, I know this is dumb for me to tell you this because then less of my tunes will get played. But so Scott wrote some really, really beautiful tunes. And then we basically recorded what we had that was good and then picked from them. We've got plenty for probably 2 more discs right now already. But we chose from them which takes went well and then organized the playlist on the disc.
So, I'm listening to these tunes, and there's a lot of different genres I'm hearing mixed together in all of this music, which is great, which is what I love. And now, you brought up that you're in the Buckinghams and you've played rock and blues and all that. And I'm sure both of you have played all different styles of music forever, and then you're mixing it together. And, I always find that the thing that catches my ear is I love original compositions that each tune has different textures, I can hear the different genres, different feels, the whole 9 yards, but they all work together on one solid recording. So, Jim, you talked about how you've got enough material for 2 more discs, and then Scott, you can probably attest to that. How did you pick the 11 tunes to be on this one? I mean, because I love the way they flow together, and they're all different though, and there's a lot of, I mean, I want to get into a couple of them, but I mean, what was the process like? Because I mean, it can be overwhelming if all of a sudden you go into record, you got like 30 different tunes. What am I supposed to do with all these tunes?
Well, it was funny. Like when we got to the point where we recorded pretty much everything that we thought we wanted to have on the album, we had some discussions as a band, and we're like, okay, what's a good opener? What's something that kind of grabs the listener right out of the gate? And we kind of came to the conclusion that like Chelsea Playground, which is the one you hear first on there, it's kind of immediate, and it's really kind of simplistic. It's almost like a children's song. It starts out, I mean, not to compare it with Chick Corea or any of that, but it just kind of starts out real simple, and then it kind of gets a little more complex. Like just kind of hits you right there. It's like, oh, okay, we're in. So, there was that. And then we kind of had some points along the album. It's like, well, there's sort of a free tune, like Event Horizon, the tune, which is about halfway through the album.
Yep.
Which follows like a kind of a straight ahead, like classic jazz sort of samba type thing that I wrote, so we just kind of started piecing stuff together. And it's an interesting process, and I don't know, Jim, if you have anything, your thoughts on that, but we kind of batted it back and forth, and we're like, okay, this is kind of all over the place, but it kind of flows.
I think the cool thing about the people in this group, and just selfishly speaking, is that we all have really eclectic tastes.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, they all kind of, because we are a band, and we function as a band. In other words, even though you're interviewing Scott and I right now, and I started it, but everyone's got an even say.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like what I always like to think about the Beatles, where any one of them could say, no, that sucks. And that was that. And it did, you couldn't do it. John might get mad if Ringo said it sucked, but that was the way it went. So we look at it that way, and everybody has a say and like, oh, that tune doesn't feel right that way, or we should not have too many solos, or we should do it this way, or Scott likes to talk about Rick, but Rick is not behind his back. But
yeah, let's get into that conversation. Wait a minute. Oh,
we
hey.
could, but Scott, but like Rick is like a genius as far as that goes. He can tell the perfect tempo, or why don't we change this one tune that's not on the record but will be on the next one, I'm sure. I was kind of like feeling it in 7. He said, well, why don't we try it in 5?
Yeah.
And it just made it happen.
Yeah, he's like the Bizarro Count Basie.
How long have you guys been together as a unit?
About 5 years, I think.
Yeah, see, I was kind of thinking that because, when I talk to different musicians, and we all know, especially in the jazz world, I think the jazz world is the most prevalent, is that, everybody's going from gig to gig. It's very rare to actually have a band together for 6 months, let alone 5 years, right? And jazz being jazz, it's almost like the music begs for a band to be a band, not like a bunch of dudes just picking up and playing. Although, it sounds killing. It's great when you have, a bunch of serious guys playing together and they don't practice all the time. I'm not saying it doesn't, but
right.
When you really get into the original composition stuff and you guys are working together for 5+ years, that has a big contribution to what the overall creativity level and the overall sound of the music is going to be when you put it on a record. And I can hear that on this recording. So Scott, you brought up Event Horizon. So when I was listening to Event Horizon, first of all, there's a lot of different facets to Event Horizon. It's very syncopated in certain spots. Then it goes into like a free thing, right? That's what I was hearing kind of in the middle. Then it goes back to syncopation. The melody is very syncopated, and it was very repetitive, but it was building up so much tension that when it got to the free portion, it was like a release, Now, I don't know who wrote that tune, which one of you guys wrote that, because I didn't delve into all of that. I was listening, but was that a conscious effort? Because it almost sounds like something like somebody during the recording process or during the process of putting that tune together might have said, what if we go into like a free thing? Why don't we get out of that tempo, and why don't we try something just kind of free and then get back into a tempo? It's, whoever wrote that or whoever wants to speak to that, I thought that was really an interesting tune, and it's still like under 6 minutes. It wasn't like it was like some free form thing that went on for 35 minutes or something. So it made a lot of sense in the context of what it was.
Now you're talking about the free tune, Event Horizon, correct?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and Jim wrote that tune, so he might be able to speak to that.
Yeah. Well, I wrote that basically. The Event Horizon is when you're at the point of no return outside a black hole, and so I wanted to have this angst or this energy building up. You described it very well, and then you really don't know what happens once you get there. And so each person's got a different take on free, where we're going to go, and then we cue ourselves back into the next thing, and then and end it with that. And it was a little influenced by Steve Coleman in that it's not really in a meter, but the melody isn't even.
Yeah, no, it was interesting to me. So as a drummer, of course, I'm going to lock onto those things where I can hear the syncopated stuff. But then listening to, and then you have something like that, and then I'm a big fan of samba, bossa nova, tumbao grooves, things like that. And you have a couple of them on here, black samba. But then the one at the end, We Would Love to Have You. Listening to that, it's not the St. Thomas. It's not the St. Thomas changes or anything, but it reminded me a little bit just of the groove like Sonny did with St. Thomas back in maybe the 60s, I think, when he was experimenting a little bit during the trio thing. But it's like all of a sudden this happy tune happens at the end of the entire recording. And
we don't play happy songs.
No, yeah. Well, I hate to tell you, you recorded one. So it was really,
no. We failed.
But it was cool because it was kind of like, oh man, this is kind of like a resolution of the entire recording. Was that a conscious effort, or you guys just came up with it? It's a very cool melody. I love the chord changes. I love the bridge, the whole way it goes. It's just like, yeah, man, this like feels really good. It just grooves along.
Well, I've kind of got a rep for writing really dark tunes. I've got some other ones that aren't on the record. There's a song I like, one that didn't make the cut was a version of Happy, which uses the exact same melody, but it really takes it in a weird, strange place. It kind of goes to Coltrane Tyner place in the middle, and it's bleak. And Strut's kind of fun, which is the next to last cut. But we
Yep.
kind of, I think, wanted to leave the listener with a little bit of hope and humanity,
Yeah.
which I think everybody can use right now, despite evidence to the contrary. Sometimes. So. But yeah, it was conscious, and Jim can speak to that too. But we did plan that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to write a happy song, and recently when I got hired for a job, my boss said after the interview, and offered me the job, and I said, and she asked me, "Do you want the job?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "We'd love to have you." And I thought, wow, that's a really nice sentiment. And I thought that's a really nice sentiment for not just in that microcosm way, but in a much bigger way to our listener, that we'd love to have you as our listener, as part of our musical family, as it were.
Oh, I love that. That's great. See, look at that. Not everything's all dark and gloom, huh? That's
No.
Well,
There's some other songs in there that kind of get happy.
Oh yeah, I absolutely. I like
Yeah.
that because that tune kind of caught my ear because of where it was, and it was at the end. It was kind of different than everything else that was on the recording. Now let's talk about Strut, because Strut, that group. First of all, there's a drum solo in there, and he's playing over a groove on the drum solo, which you gotta love it. And I mean, and it's a solid length of a drum solo on a recording that's not a drummer specific recording. So I appreciate it. From all the drummers out there to you guys, I appreciate you allowing that to happen. But that tempo,
Gotta keep Rick happy.
but at that tempo, to me, at first I was like, okay, Strut, maybe this is going to be based off of sort of like a Sissy Strut kind of thing. I'm kind of listening to see where the groove is. It's not quite the Sissy Strut groove, but that tempo is just slower than it's comfortable to play, but it feels great on the recording. But I know how difficult that tempo is to play and hold it at that tempo and then take a drum solo over it. But was there a conscious effort to get it to that tempo? Because that tempo felt like it was just slower than where it should be, but it felt perfect for where you guys wrote the melody.
Yeah, Rick worked. That's kind of how I felt it, because it's kind of about someone who's got an attitude,
Yep.
but not a jerky attitude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There are people who've got attitudes. You're like, oh, that guy's whatever.
Right.
I'm not going to say the word that would whatever, but is cool. Like, you'd want to be around this person, but they got an attitude, but it's cool, and they're really laid back, and so everything's cool with them. And we worked on trying to get that tempo, and then Rick wanted us to even lay back more within that tempo.
Yeah.
So
and
it's like Monk.
Yeah, and it's an interesting feel though in the context of the entire recording. Now, Scott, I got to ask you, because you're playing keyboards but piano as well, and it's always interesting to me when I'm talking to two composers. Usually I'm just talking to one, but two different composers here of the same recording. How did you decide what you wanted to use? Because I'm hearing some Rhodes in there. I'm hearing some, bass keyboard. Then I'm hearing piano in there. I mean, what was the context of you figuring out which sound you wanted for which tune? Because it's also difficult to me if you're a composer and you write a tune, to take your head out of the compositional aspect of it and to be able to come back to the playing aspect of it, blow over it, and then also be critical and say, I think this is going to sound better on Rose rather than on piano. So I mean, that to me, it's interesting to hear your take on that.
Well, part of how our group came together, when Jim put the group together, he plays with a group called Brass Tracks, which used to play over at Hackney's. They had the Wednesday night, and they moved over to the Quarry until the pandemic. But anyway, he was acquainted. He was friends with the owner, and so when he was putting the band together, he kind of had an understanding that we would have a monthly gig at Hackney's, which we did for how many years was it? Four plus,
Yeah,
four and
four
a half,
plus. Yeah.
until they unfortunately shut down. But we had like a monthly gig. So going into this band, we had an opportunity to workshop a lot of these tunes over the course of, years in some cases. So we had a lot of opportunities to kind of play around and figure out like, oh, this sound works really well with this tune. This sound, it wasn't just like a couple days in the studio messing around. We were able to kind of like, I'm trying to think, like Escher Drive, I probably did it on, with a, like a acoustic piano sound. It was just, it didn't work, so, I was like, okay, I want a Rhodes on that.
Yeah.
The Dark Waltz, the fourth cut, it was like, it just needed some warmth. And I just love that warm Rhodes sound. So that really, an Event Horizon, like I just felt like it fit that song more on Rhodes. So we had a lot of opportunity to play with these songs in a live setting and really create something that we felt pretty good about.
Yeah, endless thanks to Mike and Joe Masterson for allowing us to do that. But it goes back to, Mike, what you said earlier about having a band. I had a band in Milwaukee years and years ago. And I learned when I was young that, wow, you start playing a tune, but like that tune is nowhere near what it starts out at 2 or 3 years later. And so when I did that, like you said, yeah, there's some, I could have hired all the cats and rehearsed a couple times and they would have sounded great. But I kind of like that organic growth process of the tune over a period of time. And so the experimentation of, oh, wow, that sound really works with this tune, and that opens it up. That's what gave us the opportunity to do that, to try things, and if they fail, well, they fail, but we didn't really have to worry about it.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, I think, and you guys are both composers too, in addition to performing on this, but really when you work as a cohesive unit as a band, I think it brings the best out of the composition as well. And it evolves, and you as a composer might have thought, oh, this is going to sound this way, but then after 6 months of playing it steadily in a performance situation, all of a sudden you see it organically grow as well, and you're like, wow, if I would have just recorded it as is with some charts and some guides, it would have sounded okay, but it would have never peaked to the creativity and where the composition could have gotten without that steady performance of it. And I mean, so Scott, talk a little bit about that, because I'm sure that's something that both you and Jim noticed, because I'm sure you guys both brought things in, and 6, 8, 9, 10, 2 years later, all of a sudden you're like, oh man, I never even thought this could sound this way. This is pretty intense.
Well, one of the I think the strengths of the band is that, especially Don and Rick, they'll tell you what they think.
Yep.
Yes.
Like Rick will be like, Don will be like, you know what, this bass line, it doesn't sound right on bass. Here's what you want to do with that, Scott. And it's like, okay. And then we reach some sort of happy medium.
Yeah.
Rick's like, like Jim was saying, I think this tune works better in 5, and we do it. And just, not having, having an idea how the tune should go, but not having like a lockdown, like this is how it should go. I don't, trying to think, I don't want to be all Paul Simon about it, not to slag on Paul Simon, but I'm, give the people in the band a chance to, give their 2 cents. And ideally it adds up to more than 8 cents when it's all added together.
Yeah, well, Rick Vidic and Don DeSanto, that it is their strength. One of their strengths is that they will tell you exactly what they think about something, which is great. And there's no ego involved. It's amazing. And they're willing to rehearse too. I mean, like Rick will be like, so when are we going to play again? When are we going to play again? So
that's such a big point too, is that rehearsal thing, and I mean, when I was playing a lot, I loved rehearsing, because I knew that if we rehearsed, we would be like able to walk into a gig and just throw down and actually be creative and not worry about all these little things that we would worry about if we didn't rehearse, like some intense stuff. So it's so important. And a lot of the guys out in New York that I know out in New York and in LA, I mean, they rehearse before they go actually do a performance. What a concept that is. It's a strange concept. What a phenomenon, I'd say. But anyways, so that's good. That, I mean, the four of you guys too all work together really well, and that's the key to a cohesive band and to be able to put a recording together like this. So Event Horizon, eventhorizonband.net. So what do we have coming up here? So you guys don't have any performances, I would assume, but is there anything on the slate of live performances, live stream performances, or anything like that? They should just head over to the website and keep up to date on what's happening. And of course, go purchase a recording.
Scott, I would check. Follow the website. We're also on Facebook, and we're trying to set up something where we can stream. We did stream one song a few weeks ago. But we'd like to do something more like that. I've got some physical issues I'm dealing with right now. I got a surgery coming up, so it probably won't happen in the next week or two. Yeah. But it'll. We miss playing. So hopefully it'll happen before too long.
Yeah, and if we need to put something on in my front driveway, we'll do that. That's what we did. I've been doing some like duo things and solo things that my wife has been pushing out on Facebook Live. We've got some stuff that way. We have some feelers in with some places now that the clubs are starting to open back up. We got some feelers out there, and most importantly, we now have a physical product that we can send people and have them listen to.
Yeah.
There's
no.
So that, and now that that's out, we can it's a little easier to get people to hear us now.
Oh yeah. Well, congratulations on the recording. I'm glad to finally meet you both. Even though it's virtually, but because things are starting to open up a little bit, we should talk. Actually, maybe we could have you over at Epiphany Art Center that I'm running over here in the West Loop sometime in the fall. Maybe we could. We would love to do that.
We would love to do that.
We would love to.
Good. So we'll have another conversation offline about that. But guys, congratulations for everything. EventHorizonBand.net. Go check this out. I mean, everybody that watches this show knows I listen to things, but I don't think I've gotten this in depth into some recordings lately. So that I listened to it and I dug it. So go check it out. I really appreciate you guys jumping on, and let's all see each other a little bit sooner rather than later in person at some point. Don't you think?
Absolutely. Great to hang out. Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Nice to meet you.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks a lot.
All right, Jim and Scott, I'll tell you, the cool thing about that recording, and I cannot talk about it enough, is that it's got so many different textures and layers to it. I mean, I'm not kidding. So go check it out. The link's below. You can see it right there. Now, thanks to Scott and Jim. And boy, we're cranking along. Tomorrow's already Wednesday. We've only got 2 shows left this week. So here's a programming note. If anybody is wondering, I'm dialing the show back to 2 to 3 shows a week because we are pushing hard over at Epiphany to get open. And it's all hands on deck right now. So I'm dropping it down to 3 shows a week. However, they're going to be good shows. Tomorrow, I've got Ralph Peterson on the show tomorrow. Yes. The legendary drummer is going to be on the show. We're going to be talking about the Messenger legacy that he's putting out. 17 past Jazz Messenger alumni. They're putting out a recording. So Ralph Peterson will be on with me tomorrow, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So you don't want to miss that. And then on Friday, Chicago Blues and Beyond. On Friday, we will be Dave Katzman and I. Dave Katzman and I will be on Friday with our special guest, Nick Moss. I knew I'd get to it. I just had to think about it. So anyways, Dave Katzman's going to be joining me. Special guest, Nick Moss. Of course, if you like what you hear, please, please, please like, share, DM, say hello, leave us a comment, check the whole thing out. And as I always say, tell your neighbors, tell your family, call the grandkids. Chicago Music Revealed right back here tomorrow, 6 p.m. with Ralph Peterson. And until next time, hopefully everybody stays safe, everybody stays healthy, and I'll see you on the next broadcast.